for the CPSC to quickly and fully investigate every complaint. In 2005, the CPSC investigated only 1%. This is a no vote. Otherwise, we are going to see the choking hazards of cribs that kill are once again hidden from public vote.
Time the gentleman has expired. Gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, I'd urge regulatory sensibility and the support of this amendment, and with that I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, my last 30 seconds, let me just say, this is an issue of the public's right to know. Let this database be available to them so they don't go buy a toy that they could have checked out on a website and found out that it was poisonous. I urge a defeat of this amendment.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Kansas. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
The recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6, Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Kansas will be postponed. We fool them. Does the gentleman from Utah rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 515, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Bishop of Utah.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 18, 2011, the gentleman from Utah and a member opposed will each control 3 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah.
Mr. Chairman, the NLCS, which is a redundant administrative system, was codified by legislation. In the 110th session of Congress, the House passed an amended bill which went over to the Senate and died. In the 111th session, the Senate picked up that bill, stripped all the House amendments off, and put it into the Omnibus Lands Bill, where without any hearing or debate, it was hidden in the bowels and sent over to us, where once again we had no hearings, limited debate, none of which was on this particular system. This redundant system, since I have introduced a resolution to try and streamline the Department of Interior by streamlining those functions, I have heard some of the most amazing accusations of what would happen if we were to do that. Everything from having the sun come up in the west to the immediate beginning of the Mayan calendar. With the time that we are at right now, and with the further indication that during this session our committee will definitely review this particular administrative system for further investigation, I would ask with permission of the chair that I withdraw the amendment.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. The amendment is withdrawn. Gentleman from Texas, rise.
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment. The gentleman will specify which amendment?
200.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 200, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Burgess of Texas.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 18, 2011, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess, and a member opposed will each control 3 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
I thank the gentleman for the recognition. This amendment would allow that no funding made available in this continuing resolution is to be used to pay for the salary of any officer or employee at the Center for Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight within the Department of Health and Human Services. The Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act never mentions, never authorizes, never appropriates money to the Center for Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight, formerly known as the Office of Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight. So without congressional authorization, OSIO, or now CSIO, proceeded to hire staff, estimated to be 200 people by the end of last year. They have rented office space in Bethesda. Tasked with implementing some of the largest and most expensive sections of the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, this agency began issuing regulations, including those related to state exchanges, medical loss ratios, grandfathered plans, and the granting of waivers to businesses on meeting the requirements of the Affordable Care Act. Currently, this agency has granted 915 waivers, accounting for 2.5 million Americans, representing about 1% of Americans who have private health insurance. This agency's operation is outside any definitive boundaries and eventually drew some criticism, forcing them to be brought back under the jurisdiction of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, effectively making CMS the most powerful health care agency in the universe, with jurisdiction over Medicare, Medicaid, the state children's health plan, and now private insurance. This center has been allowed, without congressional authorization, without congressional oversight, to make the decisions that will affect all sectors of the American population. Without any due diligence or any congressional oversight, no agency or center should be able to obtain funding, carry out their own agenda, implement policy, write regulation, and remain largely unchecked. Before any further funding is allowed to be provided by this body, we need to know where the previous funds came from, how the money was spent, and fully review their operations. I'll reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise?
I rise to claim time in opposition.
Gentlelady is recognized for 3 minutes.
I yield myself a minute and a half.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Before we passed the Affordable Care Act, countless Americans would buy coverage they thought was comprehensive, only to realize that it had huge gaps once they actually got sick. Even when the plans look similar from the outside, with comparable deductibles, co-pays, and so-called out-of-pocket limits, they can result in drastically different levels of out-of-pocket medical expenses, which is probably why more than 50% of bankruptcies in this country are because of medical debt. The Affordable Care Act created the Office of Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight.
Speaker, the House is not in order. I cannot hear the gentlelady.
Gentleman is correct. The committee will be in order. Ask members to take their conversations off the floor. Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. The Affordable Care Act created an Office of Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight to provide better information to consumers, to hold insurers accountable at the federal level, and help states with oversight responsibility. It requires insurance to provide clear information to consumers on what is really in their policies, such as standard definitions of medical and insurance terms, because hospitalization should mean hospitalization. It requires insurance to disclose data on claims payment policies and practices, claims denial rates, medical loss ratio, and other information so that consumers can make informed choices, and so regulators can make sure the rules are followed. It's also responsible for confirming that the insurance companies get approval to raise rates by more than medical inflation. In short, it dramatically increases transparency and accountability in the health insurance market. Why wouldn't we want to have—
Time of the gentlelady has expired.
I yield myself 30 seconds.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
Why wouldn't we want consumers to know what they are buying so that they don't go broke, that they get the health care that they need when they are sick? Quite frankly, what this does is to help keep the big insurers honest, and that's probably why the majority has put the desires of the insurance companies and the interests of the insurance companies before the well-being of the American public. And I reserve the
gentleman. Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, what the gentlelady asserts may or may not be true. The fact is we don't know. We never authorized this agency. In a 2,700-page bill passed in the dead of night on March 23rd, no authorization for this agency existed. But, curiously enough, the head of this agency was actually hired a year ago last Wednesday. The administration knew what they were doing. They bowled right ahead and did it, but they didn't want Congress to know. The authorization language was left out of the bill, and then we forward-funded it with direct appropriations. That's why this amendment is necessary. Pull that funding out. Keep those foot soldiers under wraps, because in CMS they are under the direct control of a man who has never been confirmed by the United States Senate. Time of the gentleman has expired.
Gentlelady from Connecticut.
Can you tell me the balance of our time?
Gentlelady has 1 minute remaining.
I yield the balance of our time to Mr. Pallone of New Jersey.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respect Dr. Burgess a great deal, but I have no idea why he would be opposed to having an agency that is essentially putting a check on the insurance companies.
Will the gentleman yield?
The problem is that the insurance companies keep raising rates. They don't show the consumer what the real benefits that they're receiving are. And what we need is more transparency and some way to review these insurance premium rates so that they don't get out of hand.
Will the gentleman yield? Why didn't we have an oversight hearing in the last year?
The fact of the matter is that this agency...
The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman from New Jersey has the time.
The fact of the matter is that this agency working with states has already had great success. In Connecticut, regulators recently rejected a proposed 20% rate increase by Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield. In Maine, state superintendents rejected WellPoint's Empire Blue Cross request to raise rates by 23%. Colorado also. In California, the review prompted Anthem Blue Cross to withdraw its request for a 39% premium increase. Why are you objecting to us trying to put a check on these insurance companies that keep raising their rates at outrageous levels? That's what this is all about. I oppose this amendment.
The gentleman has expired. The all-time has expired. The question is on an amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentlelady from Connecticut.
Recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on an amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. What purpose does the gentleman from Nevada rise?
Got an amendment at the desk, amendment number 482.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 482, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Heller of Nevada.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 18, 2011, the gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Heller, and a member opposed will each control 3 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Nevada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today to offer an amendment with my friend from Idaho, Mr. Labrador, to prohibit funds from being used to designate national monuments under the Antiquities Act. Roughly 85% of Nevada is federally controlled, so I am sensitive to any actions that could close access to public lands. New national monuments would limit access, threaten grazing rights, end mineral exploration and mining, and even impact private property. And this is the last thing we need in this dire economy. A transparent public process that includes input from local officials, communities, and stakeholders for any new federal land designation is in the best interest of the residents of our public lands communities. That is why I support efforts to require all Antiquities Act actions to have congressional approval. Government that works in the best interest of the people ensures that all stakeholders have a seat at the table. Examples such as the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, which in the waning days of the Clinton administration literally obliterated massive economic development with the stroke of a pen, are why I am standing here today. I don't want this to happen in Nevada or anywhere else. I urge my colleagues to join us to protect communities from the heavy hand of the federal government and support our amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Who claims time in opposition? Gentleman from Virginia, for what purpose?
Mr. Chairman, I do rise in opposition to claim the time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, this is a bad amendment. Presidents of both parties have used this act to increase protection to lands and waters that are already U.S. government controlled. The act has no impact on private lands. It's a law that was passed by a Republican-led Congress and signed by a Republican president, Theodore Roosevelt. Since then, 15 U.S. presidents have declared 131 national monuments under the Act, 8 Republican presidents, 7 Democratic presidents. It must be remembered that the lands withdrawn are federal lands owned by all Americans, not just the residents of certain states or localities in which they happen to be located. The nation, not just a single state, has a vital interest in the future of these lands and their unique qualities. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I would reserve my time, ask how much I have so I can allocate it.
Gentleman reserves his time. You have 2 minutes remaining.
I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Farr, if I could.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for yielding. This is a bad amendment, and I urge all my friends to carefully consider it. Mr. Heller may have an issue in Nevada, but he says he wants to have legislation to require Congress to make these designations, but that's not what's here today. He's wiping out the money to give the President the ability to make these monuments. Look at, we just made one in California, in the entire coast of California, for all the rocks and islands, probably the largest monument in the United States. It was overwhelmingly endorsed by all the communities along the coast. Let local governments be involved in these things so they can petition the presidents. More Republican presidents have used this than Democratic presidents. It affects all of your states. Grand Canyon was originally a monument before Congress made it a national park. Taking away this tool in the toolbox would just leave these lands fallow. They're BLM lands. They're already owned by the federal government. They'd have no use. And you can't get into the other activities that BLM has. This is a great tool. Don't throw it away.
Mr. Chairman, I would yield the remaining minute to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Monument designations do not take non-federal land. The Antiquities Act only allows monument designations on land the federal government already owns. There is nothing improper about these designations. This authority has been upheld by every court which has reviewed it since 1906. Monument designations do not lock up resources. Monument designations under the Antiquities Act grandfather valid existing rights to any mining or other claim existing before the designation can move forward. If members object to the Antiquities Act of 1906, they should file legislation amending the Act and then come on over to the Natural Resources Committee. Doc Hastings and I will be sitting there waiting for you to testify to make your case to amend the Antiquities Act. But this amendment is based on an extreme ideology that the federal government should divest itself of the stunning national treasures managed by the Department of Interior and enjoyed by millions each year. Vote no on this amendment.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Nevada has 1.5 minutes remaining.
1.5 minutes. Mr. Chairman, I yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Idaho.
Gentleman from Idaho is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I rise today with my friend Mr. Heller to join in this great amendment. Last year, an internal document was leaked from the Department of Interior. This document described that administration plans to lock up more than 140 million acres of public lands and designate 14 new national monuments. It also proposed using its land management authority to sidestep prohibitions on monument designations. When the secret plan was brought to light, the administration backtracked and quickly claimed it had no plans to lock up millions of acres of public land. The administration essentially wanted us to forget about how President Clinton used his authority in the dark of the night to lock up millions of acres of land. I can't say for sure that the administration will follow through with that commitment, but I already know that they have betrayed us, and they have betrayed our trust. Once again, they acted to restrict public land use when Secretary Salazar rolled out a new plan, cooked up in secret, to create a new category of off-limit lands called wildlands. The actions of this administration have proven to me that it cannot be trusted to possess the authority to designate monuments without congressional oversight, which is why I have joined my friend, Congressman Heller, in offering this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Nevada is recognized. You
Yield
have
back.
15 seconds.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All time having been expired, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Nevada. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. Opinion of the chair is the ayes have it. The chair is the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Nevada rise?
Mr. Chairman, we would
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Amendment 174.
Clerk will designate. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. He hasn't started the next amendment.
We've been here having a good, cordial time.
Just a minute. Let me first. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
The gentleman was on his feet. We're trying to request a recorded vote.
Just ask me what you want.
We want a recorded vote.
Okay. A recorded vote has been asked for. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Nevada will be postponed. Gentleman Nevada, have you requested your next amendment already?
I did. Amendment 174.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 174, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Heller of Nevada.
Pursuant to the order of the House on February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Heller, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair, 3 minutes. I apologize. 3 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Nevada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yucca Mountain, as a storage location for the nation's nuclear waste, is dead. Even the administration understands that transporting the nuclear waste to a state with no nuclear activity jeopardizes the security of our nation and is a bad investment of precious taxpayer dollars. Unfortunately, this bill not only tries to keep Yucca Mountain project in regulatory limbo, it seeks to block information regarding viable alternatives to Yucca Mountain as a nuclear waste dump. Yucca Mountain is in my district, and our state has been dealing with this boondoggle project for literally decades. According to the Government Accountability Office, over the past 20 years, the proposed site has suffered from gross mismanagement, faulty science and research, contract mismanagement, and most alarmingly, questions about safety and design of the site and its impact on its surrounding environment and people. I am a strong supporter of the need to the responsibility to develop of all of our nation's energy resources, including nuclear energy. However, the key to my position is the need to be responsible, and continued investment in the storage of nuclear waste at Yucca Mountain does not meet this litmus test. I continue to be disappointed at the House's insistence of reviving the Yucca Mountain boondoggle. Most recent estimates place the cost of the Yucca Mountain facility at nearly $100 billion. Not surprisingly, this estimate seems to increase with each passing year. Given our current economic climate and our serious debt problems, our nation cannot afford to continue with this poorly managed project. Congress needs to have a serious discussion about studying reasonable alternatives to Yucca Mountain. If you're concerned about the safety of American citizens and the wise stewardship of tax dollars, then join with me to keep this project out of limbo, acknowledge reality, and move forward on a responsible solution to our nation's nuclear waste storage issue. Thank you. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman yields back. Who claims time in opposition? For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
I rise to claim time in opposition. Mr. Chairman, the gentleman's amendment would forbid funds for Yucca Mountain, but its most damaging effect is to stop the Nuclear Regulatory Commission from moving ahead with the Yucca Mountain license application review process. Mr. Chairman, the House has overwhelmingly voted multiple times over the last several years to reject the administration's closure of Yucca. The gentleman's amendment will do nothing but support the administration's political manipulations, and it will waste over $12 billion of ratepayers' money. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield to my ranking member, Mr. Pastor, for 15 seconds.
Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 15 seconds.
I thank the Chairman for yielding, and I oppose this amendment and urge my colleagues to join me, and I yield back the time.
Gentleman yields back.
Pleased to yield to Mr. Barton.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for
30 seconds.
45 seconds.
Oh, 45 seconds. Woo. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to my good friend Mr. Heller's amendment. U.S. taxpayers and electric ratepayers have spent billions of dollars on this project. It is my assumption and my opinion that the Obama administration has acted without authority to close it down. They certainly acted outside the confines of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982. I support the opposition of my good friend from New Jersey and would urge a strong no vote on this amendment, and I thank the gentleman for yielding me the time.
Gentleman goes back.
Pleased to recognize Mr. Hastings for 45 seconds.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized for 45 seconds. Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from yielding, and I understand why my good friend from Nevada is offering this. He's representing what he thinks is right for his constituents, and I commend him for that. But the fact of the matter, this is the law of the country. This is the repository, period. Yet the Department of Energy, in my view, has been operating outside the law for the last year. And ratepayers have already spent $10 billion on this. If we terminate this site, we'll have other liabilities. In fact, there are already contractual liabilities of $2 billion that have been let already. Plus the expense, if we have to find another repository, will cost taxpayers further billions of dollars. So I understand why the gentleman is doing this. I think he is incorrect, but I urge that members vote against his amendment. Yield back.
Time has expired. How much time is this? The gentleman from New Jersey has 1 minute remaining.
Yeah, I'd like to recognize the remainder of my time Mr. Visklosky and Mr. Altmaier. Mr. Visklosky, would you care to? Mr. Altmaier?
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman, and I will insert my statement into the record. My good friend from Nevada does a wonderful job of representing his district and his state. I believe this, however, is a misguided amendment, respectfully, and I will yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Visklosky and insert my statement into the record.
Gentleman is recognized.
Chairman, I also rise in opposition to this amendment. The fact is there is an appeal taking place before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. A number of states have filed suit. Those suits are going to be in court this spring. This is not an issue we should be deciding tonight. I'm strongly opposed to the amendment, and I would yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. How much time is left? We'll try not to. Gentleman from New Jersey actually has 30 seconds remaining.
I urge people to vote against Mr. Heller's amendment and yield back.
Gentleman yields back all time. Gentleman from Nevada?
I yield back.
I'll yield it back.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman.
What purpose does the gentleman?
I strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I'm just going to take a minute here. I want to say to my colleagues here, I completely agree with my friend from Washington State, Mr. Hastings, the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, that this violates the law of the land. And there's no scientific basis for what is happening here. We have submarines and nuclear power carriers that are offloading waste in Bremerton, Washington, that go to Idaho, that are supposed to go to Yucca Mountain. And we made a commitment to the people of Idaho that we would move that waste out of here in the 2025 time frame. Now, this project is being stopped without Congress. I was here when we passed the law, and this is being stopped without Congress changing the law. And I think it's a travesty, and we're wasting billions of dollars. We should go ahead and finish this project, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. All time having expired, the questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Nevada. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Opinion of the chair, the nays have it. Does anyone want to stand up? The amendment is not agreed to.
What purpose the gentlelady from South Dakota rise?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk. It is number 563.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 563, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mrs. Nome of South Dakota.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 18, 2011, the gentlelady from South Dakota, Ms. Nome, and a member opposed will each control 3 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from South Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chair, I offer this amendment because I'm concerned about an EPA rule on the national primary or secondary ambient air quality standards that would make the standard for the amount of coarse particulate matter in the air more stringent. Last summer, the EPA laid the groundwork to regulate dust at an unprecedented level. We must stop the EPA from any further regulation of farm dust. Anyone who has driven a combine through a field or a pickup down a gravel road knows that dust is a part of rural living. Potentially fining farmers and livestock producers who practice good management with new dust regulations would be excessive and extremely detrimental to our nation's vital agriculture industry. Mr. Chair, it's hard to think of something more emblematic of Washington's regulatory overreach than the potential punishment of farmers and livestock producers for kicking up a little dust. Expanding the coarse particulate matter standard on dust would be a burdensome regulation for farmers and ranchers. My amendment would prohibit the EPA from using any of the funds made available under this Act to modify the standard for coarse particulate matter under the Clean Air Act. There is enough uncertainty in farming in rural America. We do not need to add to that uncertainty with the threat of more strict EPA regulations on farm dust. Farmers are certainly looking for certainty about the future. Burdening them with greater regulations on dust is excessive and unreasonable. For this reason, my amendment is supported by the American Farm Bureau and the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. I urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and I'd like to reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves her time. What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment. Claim the time.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, the Nome Amendment would prevent EPA from updating air pollution standards for dangerous soot pollution. The Clean Air Act requires that EPA revise the limits on this type of harmful pollution when new science tells us it's necessary to protect human health. EPA hasn't changed the standard since 1987. The amendment would tell EPA, though, it would require EPA to ignore the science. If new science has emerged in the last 24 years that shows that soot pollution is more dangerous than we knew 24 years ago, EPA would have to ignore any new scientific findings. This amendment applies to one dangerous pollutant, coarse particles. They are so small that they get past the respiratory system's natural defenses and they lodge in our lungs. Scientific studies have linked these particles to a variety of serious health problems, including increased respiratory symptoms in children and premature death in people with heart and lung disease. Why is the majority party so afraid of science? I don't know as much about particulate matter as the scientists at EPA, but I don't really think you do either. It seems to me we ought to defer to the scientists and respect the public's health. EPA is charged with protecting the public health, and they're doing a pretty good job, and we ought to let them do it. At this point, I reserve my time, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Virginia reserves his time. The gentlelady from South Dakota.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to yield 1 minute of my time to Mr. Crawford.
The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Like many of my colleagues, I represent a largely rural district. Agriculture is the #1 industry in the 1st District of Arkansas, and farmers there and across the country, I might add, are facing tough economic challenges like many other businesses today. Regardless of the production they're engaged in, poultry, cotton, rice, soybeans, whatever, the chief complaint of farmers in my district is the continued pressure placed on them by the onerous regulatory burdens of the Environmental Protection Agency. Now, under the auspices of clean air, the EPA wants to regulate dust. American farmers produce the safest, cheapest, and most abundant food supply on the planet. There are over 300 million mouths to feed in our country, and less than 1 million farmers engaged in the process of meeting that demand. Not to mention global demands growing exponentially, where by the year 2050 there will be a total population of over 9 billion people. Folks, for centuries Americans have led the way in agricultural production and will continue to be the leading producers of commodities as long as farmers aren't being stifled by crippling regulations and EPA overreach. Government should be aiding our efforts to lead the way in agricultural production, not hindering them. The regulatory regime must come to realize that our food is grown in the dirt, and in the process of the production of that food, farmers are going to stir up a little dust. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, how much time do I have remaining?
The gentleman has 1.5 minutes remaining.
1.5 minutes. We would close. Does the gentlelady have other speakers?
Yes, I do.
Then I think we should continue to reserve our time. Then.
Gentlelady has 15 seconds remaining.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to yield the balance of my time to Mr. Simpson, the gentleman from Idaho.
The gentleman from Idaho is recognized for 15 seconds.
How much?
15.
13 seconds.
This is a dang good amendment and should pass. The EPA continually claims that they want certainty, and what they're creating is uncertainty. And I can tell you that every rancher and every farmer in Idaho and across this nation is concerned about what the EPA is trying to do with dust regulations and the impact it's going to have on food production. Pass this amendment, regardless of what they say.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Virginia. Gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Boy, that Simpson's good at this. I would yield at this point the remaining minute and a half to the very distinguished ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Mr. Waxman of California.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, you would think that EPA is about to regulate these fine particulate matter for the very first time, but that's not accurate. PM10 is already regulated because EPA had to set a standard to protect the public health, because these small particulates can get into your lungs and they can cause increased respiratory symptoms in children, premature death in people with heart and lung disease. So EPA sets a standard to protect the public health. What this amendment would do would be to stop EPA from setting a standard that might be tighter if the science dictates it. Now, once they set a standard, EPA does not regulate. EPA leaves it to the states to decide how they will meet that standard. EPA is already talking to the stakeholders in the agricultural communities. Usually, they don't have they don't get, in the past, vast majority of states have not required farms to take any action that require reductions of this pollution. Instead, states have typically reduced particles from industrial processes. California and Arizona are addressing agricultural pollution by incorporating USDA-approved conservation measures in some areas. But EPA does not target monitoring in rural areas. They are reaching out to the stakeholders. EPA should not be stopped with this amendment.
All time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from South Dakota. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from California.
Recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from South Dakota will be postponed. What purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise? The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 430, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Pitts of Pennsylvania.
Pursuant to the order of House of February 18, 2011, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pitts, and a member opposed will each control 3 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a simple, straightforward amendment. This amendment prevents funds from being used by the Department of Health and Human Services to implement rules regarding Obamacare's essential benefits package. As if Obamacare's mandate that everyone must purchase health insurance wasn't enough, the law went one step further. The federal government will now tell every single American and business what their health plan must cover. To make matters worse, Obamacare grants this unprecedented power to a single person. Obamacare gives this power to the Secretary of Health and Human Services to determine which benefits are essential for patients affecting every man, woman, and child in America. Not to mention, the more benefits that HHS determines to be essential, the higher the premiums will be for coverage, thus increasing overall cost for small businesses and families across America. Behind me is a chart of all the new powers granted to the Secretary under Obamacare. It was meant to be printed on a 5-foot by 10-foot chart, so even at this size it's difficult to read. But if you have a magnifying glass, you can actually read this. Obamacare has nearly 2,000 of the Secretary's shell statements. The new powers of the Secretary are symptomatic of the vast expansion of federal control that, in many cases, usurps state authority and limits private sector autonomy and innovations and ability to function. This bureaucracy at its finest, and it is most destructive. The ability to define minimum benefits is just one of many of the new powers, but it is one of the pivotal ones, and it is precisely why we have pointed out that this is a government takeover of the health industry. I believe patients are capable of deciding which health insurance plan best fits their needs, not a government bureaucrat. For example, the federal government shouldn't tell Mormons in Utah that they need to buy coverage for alcohol counseling. Yet Secretary Sebelius is now in a position to do just that. And there are many other ridiculous examples like this. Former HHS Secretary Leavitt, writing today in the Washington Post, perfectly describes the outcome of Obamacare. He said, quote, "It puts more power than is prudent into the hands of one person, and it is not an answer to our national health care crisis," end quote. There is too much power in one office. I urge the House to adopt my amendment and stop the federal takeover of personal health care decisions. And I yield back.
Gentleman, yield back or reserve his time? Gentleman, time of the gentleman has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise?
I rise to claim time in opposition.
Gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment. I must say that I think I'm in the movie Groundhog Day. How many times do we have to vote to defund Affordable Care Act in one day? This amendment will stop the implementation of essential health benefits. These rules will ensure that a minimum level of quality health coverage will be covered by plans available on the exchanges. We are talking about benefits related to things like hospitalization, emergency services, maternity care, newborn care, mental health care. This ensures that every plan on the exchange meets minimum standards. It protects individuals and small businesses. It allows them to pick out their plan with the confidence that they will be able to get the adequate kinds of coverage that they need. Why? Why does the majority want to stand between consumers and the information that they need? I urge my colleagues to please oppose this amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
I would advise the gentlelady from Connecticut that the time of the gentleman from Pennsylvania has been yielded back, so the only time remaining is your time.
How much time is remaining?
1 minute and 45 seconds.
I yield the time to Mr. Pallone of New Jersey.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The problem for the American consumer is that the insurance company gouges them with high premiums and gives them lousy benefits. And so all we've been trying to do in the health care reform is make it possible for the consumer to get an affordable policy and to have a decent benefit package. And I, for the life of me, don't understand why the Republicans don't want that to happen. Why do they want the consumer to not be able to get affordable insurance and be able to get decent benefits? People are amazed because they expect that their insurance policy is going to provide physician care, hospital care, emergency care, prescription drugs, and oftentimes it doesn't even provide all these things. So there should be an essential benefit package. If you're a big corporation, you can go out and get a nice benefit package for employees, and you can get an affordable policy. But if you're a small business or you're an individual, you can't do it. So all we're doing is trying to level the playing field so that, you know, the little guy can get the good benefit package and get the affordable insurance just like the big corporation. Again, I don't understand why our Republican friends would not want that to happen. And it's just practical. It's just a practical solution here. If you pass this amendment, then we're going to go back to the same thing again where that, you know, average American can't get the good policy and can't get affordable insurance. It's not fair. It's an issue of fairness. So oppose this amendment.
Time of the gentleman has expired. All time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pitts. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentlelady from Connecticut. Recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Pennsylvania will be postponed. What purpose does the gentleman from Delaware rise?
the desk designated number 241.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 241, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Carney of Delaware.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 18, 2011, the gentleman from Delaware, Mr. Carney, and a member opposed will each control 3 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Delaware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is simple and straightforward. It would eliminate funding for the $50 million oil and gas research and development program funded through the Department of Energy's Fossil Energy R&D account. This cut, which the President also proposed in his FY 2020 budget, would save the taxpayers money and end an unnecessary subsidy to the oil and gas industry. I'm proposing the elimination of this R&D program because the research is being done and should be done by the industry itself. Don't just take my word for it. The industry itself is doing the job and says so. There's an ad on today's edition of the Hill newspaper on the back which says in part, this is placed here by the people of America's oil and natural gas industry, that oil and natural gas companies are leading innovators, investing hundreds of billions of dollars in innovative technology and capital projects over the past decade. We should be using our scarce federal dollars on clean energy innovation that we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, create jobs, and stay competitive globally. This continuing resolution would cut over $2 billion in renewable energy research and development. At a time when we are looking to cut unnecessary spending, the oil and gas R&D program should be on the chopping block as well. The oil and gas industry has ample resources to develop these technologies without this federal subsidy. A recent GAO report found that the industry spends over $2 billion of its own money annually on R&D. This $50 million cut to an R&D program for the oil and gas industry is the right way to cut spending, and I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting the amendment. Thank you, and I yield back and reserve the remainder of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from New Jersey.
I rise to claim time in opposition.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment uses a heavy-handed approach in order to shut down important programs at the Department of Energy. Fossil energy sources supply more than 80% of our nation's total energy. Using these resources more efficiently and more clearly and developing technology that can access new domestic sources are extremely important when so much of our energy depends on fossil fuels. This amendment would stop programs that do just that. For example, would prevent work like the development of ultra-clean fuels. There may be some areas of research which the private sector does not need help, but there are other areas of research which are too risky for industry to take on. I oppose the amendment, and I'm pleased to yield to my ranking, Mr. Pastor, for any comments he may wish to make.
Thank the Chairman for yielding. Mr. Chairman, I also rise to oppose the amendment. The amendment prohibits funds for being used for oil and gas research. Without this amendment, the Department of Energy would spend $38 million during the year. As my chairman points out, fossil fuel sources are and will continue to be a large part of our energy mix. Given their importance, research and development in this area is necessary to improve the efficiency and the environmental cost of fossil fuels. Further, stopping programs mid-year, which this would do, results in costs associated with terminating ongoing work. I'm committed to working with the gentleman to review the balance of funding and as we move forward, but I cannot support the amendment at this time. And I yield back to my chairman.
I yield back as well, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Delaware is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Chairman, my point is that the industry itself is doing this research and development and should do it without a federal subsidy. I mentioned the full-page ad in today's edition of the Hill newspaper, which says that they're doing this. We shouldn't be subsidizing an industry that's mature and profitable. We need to be spending money on renewable energy sources so that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And instead, in this continuing resolution, we're cutting $2 billion out of research and development for new energy sources. I don't object to research and development going on for traditional oil and gas industry, but the industry itself ought to be doing that research.
Time of the gentleman has expired. All time has expired. The question is on amendment offered by the gentleman from Delaware. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Noes have it. Amendment is not agreed.
I ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6, Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Delaware will be postponed. First, the gentleman from South Carolina rise. I have an amendment at the desk, Mr. Chairman. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 164, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Mulvaney of South Carolina.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 18, 2011, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney, and a member opposed will each control 3 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And very briefly, I want to begin by thanking the Appropriations Committee. I understand the historic nature of what's been happening here and the size of the taxpayer savings that we've seen over the last 3 days. But I rise because the debt and the deficit problem facing our nation are greater than I think most people in this room understand, and certainly most people back home understand. The circumstances demand that we go just a little bit further than we have, and that's what this amendment does. It goes just a little bit further. It takes non-defense discretionary spending back to 2006 levels instead of 2008. That represents an additional 3% savings, which on one hand doesn't sound like that much, but on the other hand actually saves $134 billion of the $900 billion worth of deficits that we will incur between tomorrow and the rest of this year. Folks have asked me why I've done this, why I've waited 3 years to do it, why we're here at 1 o'clock in the morning to hear this amendment. And I'm doing it because I feel that most of the folks don't grasp the size of the difficulty. And I know that most of the folks in my district don't grasp it yet. And I've been struggling with how to explain to people exactly what a $1,600 billion deficit means and a $14,000 billion debt. This chart, I think, does it better than anything else. This chart is something that we put together using Congressional Budget Office numbers from the baseline. And this number, very simply, ladies and gentlemen, shows when we will use 100% of our revenues, 100% of our revenues to pay our debt. And that number, using the CBO estimates, is in 2055. This is the equivalent of going back to your family and saying everything that we make will go to pay down the minimum payment on our credit card. And this number is probably too late. The CBO estimates on interest are much lower than we're actually experiencing in the market these days. The scary part is that if we don't do anything, the scary part is if we continue business as usual, this will happen. This will happen unless we make dramatic changes to the way that we do business around here. I heard the gentleman from Virginia earlier today, Mr. Moran, mention that he thought that the H.R. 1 represented an economic death spiral. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is an economic death spiral. There is no coming back from a situation where you use all of your money just to pay your debt. We can and will begin work on this year in the budget. We can and will continue work on this as we go through the debt ceiling debate, and we can and should keep this in mind with everything that we do. But in my humble opinion, we can start tonight by approving this amendment, and I reserve the remainder of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. For what purpose, gentleman from Washington, rise?
I rise to take the time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes. How much time?
To make cuts back to the 2000 for Defense, Homeland Security, and Veterans Affairs would do enormous damage to the country. I mean, we'd be talking about $65, $70 billion in defense. Homeland Security and VA would be very substantial as well. And I just think of the VA health care benefits that were increased by our members of Congress working on a bipartisan basis, our former colleague Chet Edwards. We increased health care to take care of the problems associated with the veterans coming back and needing post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, needing all kinds of help. We have thousands of veterans today who are homeless. And so taking these levels back to 2006, in my judgment, would do devastation to this part of the budget. So I urge a no vote on this amendment, and I reserve my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 15 seconds.
Reclaim the balance of my time. With all due respect to the ranking member, I was not clear. This amendment does not take defense, homeland security, or VA back to 2006 levels, only non-defense, non-security discretionary spending.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
The gentleman yield. I have time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Washington.
Yes. I would yield to the gentleman just to say we had a different description of your amendment. I regret that there were inaccuracies. But even for the rest of the government, I think the amendment going back to 2006 is too severe. And it's as the chairman would say, it's an across-the-board cut. Give all the authority to OMB. I'm with Hal Rogers. It's not a good idea. Let's defeat the amendment.
The gentleman yield back his time. The gentleman yield back. All time has been yielded back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from South Carolina. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, request recorded vote.
Recorded vote has been requested pursuant to Clause 6, Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from South Carolina will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 6, Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in the Congressional Record on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 377 by Mr. Flake of Arizona. Amendment number 166 by Mr. Ginta of New Hampshire. Amendment number 445 by Mr. Hall of Texas. Amendment 141 by Mr. Lee of California. Amendment 109 by Mr. Griffith of Virginia. Amendment 548 by Mr. Jones of North Carolina. Amendment 47 by Mr. Luetkemeyer of Missouri. Amendment 149 by Mr. Luetkemeyer of Missouri. Amendment 569 by Mr. Ice of California. Amendment 94 by Mr. Sullivan of Oklahoma. Amendment number 216 by Mr. McKinley of West Virginia. Amendment number 217 by Mr. McKinley of West Virginia. Amendment 545 by Mr. Pompeo of Kansas. Amendment 200 by Mr. Burgess of Texas. Amendment 482 by Mr. Heller of Nevada. Amendment 563 by Mrs. Nome of South Dakota. Amendment 430 by Mr. Pitts of Pennsylvania. Amendment 241 by Mr. Carney of Delaware. Amendment 164 by Mr. Mulvaney of South Carolina. The chair will reduce to 2 minutes the time for any electronic vote after the first series of votes. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 377 printed in the Congressional Record offered by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, in which the proceedings were postponed and in which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 377 printed in the Congressional Record offered by Mr. Flake of Arizona.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House of Representatives continues work tonight on the $1.2 trillion spending bill to fund government operations for fiscal year 2011. Another round of votes now on remaining amendments. This is the first of 19 votes. An amendment by Arizona Republican Jeff Flake to prohibit funds for construction of an ethanol blender pump or ethanol storage facility. Nearly 600 amendments were filed on this large spending bill. House Republicans and Democrats turned to some friendly sparring earlier this evening as they took jabs at each other over how long it has taken to complete work on the fiscal year 2011 spending bill. After a series of votes, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor and House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer reached an agreement to shorten consideration of each amendment to 6 minutes instead of 10. Most of the House cheered except for Representative Barney Frank. In the end, no one agreed to the shorter debate time, but here's a look at some of the lawmakers' exchange.
For what purpose does the Minority
Mr. Speaker, my staff has talked to the Majority Leader's staff. I was looking for the Majority Leader. If he was available to, or perhaps someone on the majority side is available to inform us of the planned schedule for the balance of the evening.
Is the gentleman asking Out of order for 1
I do.
minute. Gentleman is recognized.
I thank that. I yield to my friend, the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would say the gentleman from Maryland, as he and I have discussed throughout the day, we have asked members to continue to be judicious in their remarks. If we want to get out of here at a reasonable hour, that we have been at this for at least 90 hours, and we continue to debate these amendments. We will anticipate votes again within 2 hours, and we will continue along that to continue the votes throughout the evening. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman.
Gentleman from Maryland has the time.
I thank the gentleman for that information. As I understand what the gentleman just said, we'll probably have the next series of votes approximately midnight. Would the gentleman have in mind when the next series of votes would be after that?
I would say to the gentleman again, it depends on how members feel on the other side of the aisle as well as ours as to how expeditious they want their remarks to be. We've been at this again for 90 hours. We intend to have votes again probably within a couple hours after midnight, and we will proceed along those lines. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his in the information. I will tell him that I believe on my side we have 3, perhaps 4 amendments. One we think is subject to a point of order. So we have 3 amendments left on this side. I'm not sure how many we will have on your side.
I would say to the gentleman understands and knows that we have throughout the day offered to reduce debate time throughout, and the gentleman also knows that the majority of his amendments on his side have been debated. And if the gentleman is prepared at this point to accept our offer to reduce the amount of time from 10 minutes per amendment down to 6 or 5, I think we could get that done as well. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Time of the gentleman has expired.
I'll yield to the gentleman from Massachusetts.
I gather a unanimous consent may be propounded to reduce debate time. I just want to stress, we were told yesterday we were debating the whole government. We were then going to debate important public policy questions for 10 minutes. We're now going to get the privilege of debating important public policy questions for 6 minutes. If this is open government, I think I'm going to have to look for something else, because I think it is, as I said yesterday, a travesty.
If the gentleman would yield.
The gentleman will continue to yield. I do think we ought to make clear what we are talking about. Important public policy questions being debated for 3 minutes on each side. That, as I said, is a travesty.
If the gentleman would yield. Someone would yield.
I don't hear objection on this side of the aisle.
Just for the record, Mr. Speaker, I think the gentleman from Massachusetts may have somewhat of a short memory, given that in December we had a vote on a CR for 1 hour under a closed rule. So with that, just a little reminder.
The gentleman yield. The gentleman yield. I ask the gentleman to yield.
I look forward.
I'll yield to the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I look forward to
I didn't hear any objection before this, so I hope I
will.
don't now. I yield to the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Well, I didn't know how long it was going to take my Republican friends to going from talking about their superior virtue to saying they were just like us. It took less time than I thought. But I would also say that in the bills that came out of the committee that I chaired, we always had debate and we always had open rules. But if the gentleman is saying that he now understands why people on our side did what we did, and I often disagreed, as I said, he got there more quickly than I thought he would. And that may be the only thing about the way they're running the House that has happened more quickly than we thought it would.
Reclaiming my time, I will tell my friend, the Majority Leader, I still do not hear objection on our side.
Thank the gentleman.
I was just going to ask what he said. I didn't understand. I'm sorry.
Did he object? No. Did he object? No.
Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Committee will be in order.
This is the first of 19 votes and another series of amendments. More votes are expected throughout the night and possibly a final vote. House Democratic leaders spoke to reporters today about the 2011 spending bill nearly completed in the House.
Good afternoon. Oh, wow. Good afternoon. As we gather here this afternoon, we are in the 6th week of the new Republican majority, and we have yet to see congressional Republicans address the country's #1 priority. They have not put forth one jobs bill to create one job. And Democrats and the American people have been repeating a simple refrain: show us the jobs. Now the GOP is not just ignoring jobs, they're cutting them. Today we continue to debate a Republican spending bill that cuts jobs, weakens the middle class, and does not reduce the deficit. The bill will destroy 800,000 American jobs, according to the Economic Policy Institute. It will increase class sizes and take teachers out of the classroom. Can you imagine? What does this mean to people across the country? It means the class size in your school may be, the number may be increased. My own granddaughter told me that was not a good idea when she was 11 years old. Now she's 12 and she still doesn't think it's a good idea. It will jeopardize homeless veterans, make our communities less secure, threaten America's innovation, and all the Republicans can say about this: loss of jobs, larger class size, problems for America's homeless vets, and the rest, so be it. From the beginning, Democrats have said we will measure every proposal by 3 tests. Does it create jobs? Does it reduce the deficit? Does it strengthen the middle class? This continuing resolution fails on all 3 scores. And it's long past the time when we must work together to create American jobs. Job creation and American growth must be our top priority. Instead, in recent days, we've heard talk of a government shutdown. Let's remove all doubt. We all have a responsibility to make sure that there is no government shutdown. The last thing that American people need is for congressional Republicans or Democrats to draw a line in the sand that hinders keeping the government open. Closing our government would mean our men and women in uniform wouldn't receive their paychecks, and veterans would lose critical benefits. Seniors wouldn't receive their Social Security checks, and essential functions from food safety inspection to airport security could come to a halt. When President Bush was in office and I was Speaker, we met with then Minority Leader Boehner and the representatives of the administration to solve critical issues facing our nation, negotiating a stimulus package a couple of years ago, now almost 3, to help America's middle class, and a financial package to save the economy. We're on the brink of a financial disaster. We worked with the administration and with Mr. Boehner to halt that steep fall that our financial institutions was about to take. We didn't like having to do that. It wasn't the Democrats didn't create the problem. It was President Bush's solution. The Republicans didn't want to vote for it. We cooperated with President Bush. So the idea of cooperation in a bipartisan way to do the right thing for our country is one that we have to keep uppermost in our mind. As we see this flood of amendments of every idea anybody could ever think of, it's interesting. But it's not what needs to happen. What needs to happen to govern is to choose, President Kennedy told us. We must establish priorities. It's not everything you can think of. It's what must be, those things that must be done for the American people. And their top priority is the creation of jobs, We must have a continuing resolution that does just that, make it a priority for job creation, deficit reduction, and strengthening the middle class. And now I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished Democratic whip, Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you very much, Madam Leader. We have, as the Speaker indicated, been here for 2 months. We've been here for 2 months, and we have not taken a single action to create jobs in America. In fact, we've done 2 major things that will undermine, in my view, jobs in America. First of all, we adopted a rules package. What did that rules package provide for? An additional $5 trillion in deficits. We hear a lot about cutting spending, but the rules package provides for the cutting of revenues by $5 trillion without any way to pay for it. Therefore, even if the Republicans accomplished what they say they want to accomplish, a $100 billion cut in spending, and we believe there needs to be a cut in spending, and not only that, the President of the United States has offered a budget which cuts over $1 trillion over the next 10 years in spending. The fact is that the Republicans have now offered a continuing resolution which puts us in a hole. We've said we want to out-educate, out-innovate, and out-invest and build our competitors in the global marketplace. In terms of out-educating, the Republicans have offered a substantial cut in education. They've made it tougher for young people to go to college, for families to be able to afford for their kids to go to college, for 200,000 teachers to be kept on teaching our children in America. They have cut 20,000 researchers from the National Science Foundation, undermined our ability to innovate and compete in the global marketplace. And as Tom Donahue, the President of the United States Chamber of Commerce, has observed, they have cut investment in infrastructure, which would have created tens of thousands of jobs. So that, unlike the Democrats who came into office to stabilize and to build and to create jobs, the Republicans who went through the same election we did and heard America's cry for jobs and growth in the economy, their response has been simply political. We should not be surprised. I want all of you to ask yourselves, what was the long-term impact of the contract with America? I think you'll be hard-pressed to say that the bills that were focused on in 1995 made a difference in America. And very frankly, in this first 2 months, I think you'll be hard-pressed to say that we have made a difference for America. That's unfortunate. We want to work with our Republican colleagues, and I mean that sincerely. I've had the opportunity during these first 2 months to sit down for significant periods of time with Mr. Cantor, the Majority Leader, with Mr. McCarthy, the Republican whip, with Mr. Camp, the Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And I've had an opportunity also to have a brief discussion with Mr. Hensling, the Chairman of their conference. And I've told all of them, we want to work together. We want to reach across to create common cause for solutions to America's challenges. I'm hopeful that we can do that. One way that America told us very loudly in 1995 is not the way to do it, is to shut down government. And I'm going to work very hard, as the leader said, with all of my Democratic colleagues and hopefully my Republican colleagues to make sure that we do not shut down our government. We don't want to do that. We hope our Republican colleagues don't want to do that. But if the posture that they take is no way, our way or no way, then it is possible that will happen. But it will not happen if we work together, which is what we want to do. We saw the negative consequences of that in 1995. Our Republican colleagues thought it would be politically advantageous. Hopefully they do not repeat that mistake again. And now I yield to the Assistant Leader Mr. Jim Clyburn of South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Whip. Madam Leader, I think that all of us remember during our lame duck session last, 3 months ago, we heard some chanting from the other side, where are the jobs? For the last 6 weeks, it's been anything but jobs. Rolling back women's rights, repealing consumer protections, making it harder for students to go to school, balancing the budget on the backs of working families, veterans, and young people. And now, they are putting Social Security payments and services at risk. The Social Security Administration, responsible for processing benefit applications, issuing checks to recipients, and sending new Social Security cards to children, warned in a letter to its employees on Thursday that it may have to furlough workers if the proposed cuts to this budget are enacted into law. In the GOP's so be it spending bill, Republicans have proposed cutting Social Security administrative funding by more than 9%, from $11.8 billion in 2010 to $10.7 billion this year. In addition, the Republican proposal provides for $1.7 billion less than Social Security needs to keep pace with inflation and its rising workloads. These are the wrong priorities. Democrats have said we will measure every effort by whether it creates jobs, strengthens the middle class, and reduces the deficit. Democrats agree with President Obama that we must out-innovate, out-educate, and out-build the rest of the world. We believe we can live within our means and create jobs, invest in our future, and reduce the deficit, starting with an aggressive attack on waste, fraud, and abuse. I hope that when we get back from this break, that we can work together on behalf of the American people to move our country forward. And with that,
thank you very much, Mr. Leader. And as I said to Mr. Hoyer, it's the first time I've heard him make some remarks without saying "make it in America." I know he's going to catch up with that during the Q&A, because that's indeed what we must do. We must make it in America so the American people will make it in America. And this week we observed the 2-year anniversary of the recovery package. As Mr. Clyburn was speaking, and they were talking about the Republicans and their lack of job initiatives, that 1 week and 1 day after the President's inaugural address, the House of Representatives passed the recovery package, which created or saved 3.5 million jobs. President Obama and the House Democrats and the Congressional Democrats were job creators from day one. It's not enough. Much more needs to be done. That's why we want to see some initiatives on the part of our Republican friends. I do want to just mention, before we go into the questions and answers, that, again, as we gather here in Wisconsin right now, we are watching an extraordinary show of democracy in action. Wisconsin's workers, teachers, and public servants must have a seat at the table to fight for good wages and a safe workplace. I stand in solidarity with the Wisconsin workers fighting for their rights, especially commend all the students and young people leading the charge again for fairness and for opportunity in their community. With that, we'll be pleased to take any questions.
Madam Leader, good afternoon. 1995, we had a large freshman Republican class came into office. 11 months later, the government shut down on multiple occasions through early 1996. Here we have a large conservative freshman Republican class. Do you get the sense that this class, they don't understand what happened in 1995? Do you see parallels here because they are so steeled in their positions when it comes to cutting back, the budget compared to what happened?
We were all here at that time, so I'm sure we'll all have something to say about that. But I don't want to characterize what their understanding is of the issues. I just think it's important for all of us to recognize that we cannot allow the government to shut down. And again, it's important for everyone to say what they
On this vote,
like.
the yeas are 261, the nays are 158, and the amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 166, printed in Congressional Record, offered by the gentleman from New Hampshire, Mr. Ginta, in which further proceedings were postponed and in which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 160.